Children are also more likely to, well, again, when they're answering this question of who am I, to give a disorganized list of traits. So, for example, a child often doesn't have any issues with saying, I am both nice and mean in the same sentence. So, for example, I am such a nice girl. I only hit my sister sometimes. There are individual differences here, of course, but we see that children are, again, more disorganized than adolescents. In adolescence, we start to see individuals who try to organize their self concept into some kind of coherent whole that's more logical, more integrated. So we try to reconcile inconsistencies and contradictions so that like we make sense. Perhaps in some ways we're lying to ourselves because we are complicated people. We do have a diverse set of personality traits that look different in different situations. But here's an example. So let's say that you had an adolescent who was somebody who's really religious, that religion was really important to them. Their beliefs were really important to them. And one of those religious beliefs had to do with waiting until marriage to engage in sexual behaviors. This is a huge part of their identity. Now, another part of their identity is that potentially they're in this relationship with a significant other who they really love. And they want to engage in sexual behaviors with that romantic partner. How do they make sense of that? How do they reconcile inconsistencies there? There are a couple of things that they could do. One, they could downplay their religious beliefs. They could say, maybe this isn't who I am anymore. Maybe I'm no longer, that religious of a person. Or maybe they could say that they try to make sense of it by saying, well, this is the person I intend on marrying, so there's wiggle room there. There's gray area. I'm going to try to make it, where I can fit both of these aspects of my life into a coherent whole. Or maybe it's that they decide that they no longer want to be in that romantic relationship or no longer engage in sexual behaviors. They're trying to reconcile these inconsistencies. This happens a lot, actually. If you think about, like, I see myself as a good person, but I also like, want to engage in these different deviant behaviors. And I use the term deviant loosely here. Adolescents are more likely to want to do that. It feels better to feel coherent. Adolescents also start to distinguish between or among their ideal, actual, and feared selves. Ideal selves are probably as it sounds like, who do I want to be? What do I want to be known as? What's this best case scenario for my future or currently, like of who I want to be? How do I want my friends to see me? How do I want my professors to see me? Think about your own lives right now. Like, how would you ideally want to be seen by others? Or ideally be seen to yourself? Actual selves are who we actually are. Again, according to how we see ourselves, but how other people see us as well. And feared selves are also, as they sound, this idea of like, who do I not want to be? What's kind of my worst case scenario, or like the worst self I could possibly be? Maybe it doesn't even have to be the worst, but something that's always in the back of your mind, shaping your behavior as you go on through life, of trying to lead a path that doesn't take you down that feared self path. I can only speak for myself. I know that when I was growing up, I was really concerned about finishing my education. This was something that was really important to me. In my own family, I had a lot of family members who weren't able to continue on in their education. And I just knew that this was something that was really, again, important to me and important to my self concept and identity. So when I think about being back at that time of adolescence, my feared self would have been somebody who wasn't able, for whatever reason it may have been, to reach my academic goals. Now that's my feared self. These are things that we hold close to ourselves, and not something that we always want to share with other people. But just think about your own lives. Who is that person that you really worry about becoming? That's probably is that person is probably your feared self. Still talking about self terms here, talking now about changes in self-esteem. If I were to ask you without you looking at the slide or without reading anything from the textbook about how you think self-esteem changes in adolescence, I would imagine that many of you would say that your hypothesis would be that self-esteem is on a decline during adolescence. And just so we're all on the same page, self-esteem can be defined as how positive or negative one feels about themselves. So it is an evaluation. But when we look at the research broadly on adolescence, we don't see a dramatic drop in self-esteem during adolescence as a whole. That doesn't mean that there aren't individuals who experience drops or even increases, but the overall, when we look at adolescence, no dramatic drop. What we do see, however, are fluctuations day to day or moment by moment. So this means that, again, if we think of this, homeostasis line, our average norm of self-esteem, overall, we don't see that in adolescence we're really declining, but we're going up and down, up and down, up and down throughout the day. Not everybody goes through those same up and downs to the same degree. Some people are more affected by their day-to-day experiences. So let's say the positive things that happen in life, like getting a good grade on a test and or getting asked out by a person that you think is cute, or just getting praise from a teacher or a parent. Those are things that potentially could, let's say, raise self-esteem as it fluctuates day to day. But there are lots of other things that could make self-esteem decline throughout the day. So things like well, the opposite of just what I said, getting a bad grade on the test, or facing some kind of peer rejection, or getting in trouble from your parents, or getting into a fight with your siblings. So the way that we can test this is through these cool technology, essentially. Before we had cool technology, which I'll get to an example in just a second, if we just asked adolescents overall, how did you feel today? We're only getting that 1 point in history. So if I asked adolescents to record, how are you feeling now, like right before they go to bed, this doesn't really allow us to know how did they feel throughout the day. So with modern technology, we can use, this started with pagers back in the day, but now you can use phones or tablets. You get an alert, and the alert says, hey, how are you feeling right in this moment? Tell me about how you feel about yourself. Who are you with? What's going on? What happened? And let's say that this is sporadic throughout the day, so you can't necessarily anticipate it. But by having multiple assessment points throughout the day, this is how we're able to see these fluctuations. The fluctuations from a developmental perspective are greatest during early adolescence, about 12 to 14. And this is also when, let's say, peer pressure is at its peak too. So, and just wanting to hang around with our peers. So that's going to be one factor. But like I said, the degree of fluctuations vary from person to person. So some people are more all over the place in terms of these fluctuations, and some people are more stable. The take-home message, though, is that there isn't a dramatic drop in self-esteem during adolescence, which goes against a lot of our previous hypotheses and stereotypes about adolescence.